Hey guys, what's going on? James here, and before we start talking about where Jameis Winston could potentially go, I just want to say the Jameis Winston era for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers has officially ended. The Buccaneers have signed Tom Brady, and that has pretty much eliminated about every single chance that Jameis Winston has of returning to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So I'm not going to do a big whole thank you Jameis Winston video. I'm just going to mention it here. The Jameis Winston era for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the past 5 years of this team, was interesting. It was certainly a very up and down roller coaster, okay? Started off not the best with Lovie Smith and Dirk Cutter as the offensive coordinator, but things picked up once Dirk Cutter was promoted to head coach after Lovie Smith was fired. They had that 9-win season. And then we had a big down of 2, 5, and 11 years, and then it seemed like things were finally coming back up with a 7-9 season. But when you have the opportunity to get a guy like Tom Brady, you go out and get Tom Brady. And that's something I will talk about here in a second. But, Jameis Winston, I don't think that he was a particularly bad quarterback. He is pretty much leads the Buccaneers franchise records in all passing metrics now at this point, and I don't think Tom Brady's going to be breaking those in the 2 years that he's going to be with the team. So it seems like those records are going to stand for the next few years. So yeah, that's kind of cool for Jameis Winston, kind of a feather in his cap. He does hold a lot of the passing records now, if not all of them, for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But there were certainly a lot of ups and a lot of downs, to say the absolute least. And I think at the end of the day, this falls somewhere in the middle. It wasn't great. It wasn't terrible. It was just, it was all right. Okay. And I know some people may disagree with that, but that's just kind of how I feel about the Jameis Winston era at this point. Still a great quarterback. I still think Jameis Winston has a bright future ahead of him, but his era has now ended for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as they have moved on to signing Tom Brady. And let's talk about that real quick before I start talking about where Jameis Winston could go, because the Jameis Winston contract situation, I feel it wasn't a situation of Bruce Arians and Jason Light did not want Jameis Winston. I think they would have been fine with having Jameis Winston as their quarterback for this upcoming season and in the future. It was just simply an opportunity of the greatest quarterback of all time is a free agent. He's definitely thinking about coming to Tampa Bay. Jameis, sorry, you're going to be a backup option at this point. And the Buccaneers did land the big fish. They did get the GOAT Tom Brady, and that has pretty much removed any inkling of Jameis Winston coming back. But to say that the Bruce Arians and Jason Light and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers did not want Jameis Winston, I don't agree with that. I think it was just a matter of Tom Brady's there. Anybody would want Tom Brady. He's an upgrade over pretty much every single quarterback in the league at this point, minus maybe 4 guys. So yeah, that's kind of what I feel the mindset was for Bruce Arians and Jason Light. They like Jameis Winston, but it's Tom Brady, point blank. So now that we've gone ahead and talked about all of that, the Jameis Winston era, and why they picked Tom Brady over Jameis Winston, I want to talk about where Jameis Winston might go, because right now it's pretty shocking. Jameis Winston doesn't have a contract signed, and I can't speak as to what level of interest there is in Jameis Winston, whether or not he does have offers on the table or he doesn't. But right now, as it stands, Jameis Winston doesn't have a job, and seemingly by the reports, there isn't a lot of interest right now. Now, he could be talking to teams and just being really quiet about it, but I haven't seen anything reported, and he's running out of options, because right now as it stands, the Chicago Bears, they just traded for Nick Foles for a 4th-round draft pick. The Carolina Panthers signed Teddy Bridgewater to be their new starting quarterback, which means Cam Newton is going to be available on the trade market. We'll talk about that in a second. The Las Vegas Raiders, they're seemingly going to be keeping Derek Carr, and they even signed Marcus Mariota to a contract to be the backup. The Indianapolis Colts signed Phillip Rivers to a contract, and of course the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they got Tom Brady. So in terms of overall options for Jameis Winston, they're pretty slim, but I do want to talk about a few of them. The first team I want to talk about is the Los Angeles Chargers, who pretty much missed out on everybody. They let Phillip Rivers go into free agency. Teddy Bridgewater went to the Carolina Panthers. Tom Brady, he went to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It was neck and neck between the Chargers and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but ultimately Brady chose the Bucs since we are on the East Coast and we have some pretty darn good weapons, but they're seemingly out of a lot of options. Even potential intriguing options like a Case Keenum or a Marcus Mariota, they're backups now for the Cleveland Browns and the Carolina Panthers, or sorry, not the Carolina Panthers, the Las Vegas Raiders respectively. So could the Chargers be interested in Jameis Winston? Their only quarterback on the roster right now is Tyrod Taylor, and there have been some reports coming out that they're just going to sit pat with Tyrod Taylor and just draft a quarterback with, I believe they have the 5th overall pick. Could be wrong. They could have an earlier pick or a slightly later pick, but I do know they have a top 10 pick. So what are the Chargers thinking? Could they take a chance on Jameis Winston? I think no. I think that honestly, I think they're going to roll with Tyrod Taylor and draft a rookie. Or even if they don't want to draft a rookie, I think that one of the most likely things that could happen is they make a trade for a guy like Cam Newton, who is now available on the market, which just really doesn't help Jameis Winston either, considering that Cam Newton is a former NFL MVP, and he has done some really, really good things himself as well. He did have a down year last year due to injury, but Cam Newton is now available in terms of trade, or he could even get released and sign with a different team. So I don't think that the Chargers would be a very decent option for Jameis Winston at this point. He'd either be battling a guy like Cam Newton for a starting spot, which could be a very tough battle, or he could be battling a top 10 rookie draft pick, which I wouldn't expect him to win simply because of the Chargers are just going to invest in that guy no matter what. So the Chargers, I don't know if they're the best option for Jameis Winston right now. The second option that I want to talk about is definitely an interesting one. It is the New England Patriots. Could Jameis Winston go join the dark side of Bill Belichick? I'm going to say no. And I know I've said no twice now, and it's like, oh, you're just going to say that Jameis Winston doesn't fit anywhere. No, I've got a couple of places I think that he could fit. But the New England Patriots don't make a lot of sense to me either. Bill Belichick, I don't think, would be able to have patience for the player that is Jameis Winston. And let's all be honest, turnovers are a part of Jameis Winston's game, okay? He's a gunslinger, for good and for bad. He's a gunslinger. He tosses it a ton. He chucks it downfield. That's just who Jameis Winston is. Bill Belichick, however, really doesn't prefer those types of quarterbacks. He prefers more of a pocket passer, field general type of quarterback. Teddy Bridgewater would have been perfect for the New England Patriots, by the way, but they've had Matt Castle. They've obviously had Tom Brady. They've had Jimmy Garoppolo. The only guy who was kind of a difference in that was Jacoby Brissett, which they could end up having Jacoby Brissett back. Now that the Indianapolis Colts have Phillip Rivers, they could easily trade Jacoby Brissett. That's another quarterback that is on the market right now. Same thing could be said with a guy like Andy Dalton. He is also on the market, considering the Cincinnati Bengals are going to draft Joe Burrow number 1 overall. So the New England Patriots, I feel, would explore a trade option for a guy like an Andy Dalton, or a guy a guy like an Andy Dalton, or definitely a guy, who's more of a field general, pocket passer type of quarterback. I just feel Jameis Winston really doesn't fit what the New England Patriots are doing in terms of how they want to run the quarterback position. And then also they have Jarrett Stidham as well, which would always be something that Bill Belichick would consider. The third team I want to talk about real quick as an option for Jameis Winston is the Pittsburgh Steelers. Mike Tomlin, Ben Roethlisberger. I think that this could be a very interesting landing spot for Jameis Winston and potentially, be the starting quarterback after a year or two. I don't think he would beat out Ben Roethlisberger, not because I don't think that Jameis Winston's a better quarterback than Ben Roethlisberger, but simply because they are so invested at Ben Roethlisberger at this point as their franchise guy. I think he's pretty much going to end his career being the starting quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But really, this would be a very interesting landing spot for Jameis Winston, because Jameis Winston and Ben Roethlisberger are essentially the same exact quarterback. They're big guys with big arms who can take a lot of hits. Jameis Winston is essentially a very, very close representation of a future Ben Roethlisberger, in my opinion. So would the Pittsburgh Steelers consider bringing in Jameis Winston and saying, hey man, just sign a 2-year deal with us, maybe even a 1-year deal if you have to, wait for Big Ben to retire in the next year or two, and then boom, there's your shot. You can be the starting quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think he would consider that. I don't think it's the perfect option for him, but it is one I would definitely think that Jameis Winston would consider. Second to last option I want to mention here is the Miami Dolphins. Now, the Miami Dolphins quarterback position is really weird right now. They have Ryan Fitzpatrick, who they adore, and they also have Josh Rosen, who they don't like that much. Me personally, I want the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to trade for Josh Rosen. I think he would be a phenomenal developmental backup for the Buccaneers, and I think he could be a future franchise quarterback for us, but that's neither here nor there. It probably won't happen. But if Jameis Winston came into the quarterback room of Ryan Fitzpatrick and Josh Rosen, it would be interesting because right now as it stands, the Miami Dolphins have been linked to Tua from Alabama for months. Pretty much for a whole year now they've been linked to him. They've been wanting him for a whole entire freaking year. And if the Miami Dolphins drafted him, I don't think that Jameis Winston would be able to beat him out, simply because same thing with the Chargers. If you're investing a top 10 draft pick in a quarterback, let alone a top 5 pick, he's your guy, okay? He is your guy hands down. The big thing with Tua is, will he be healthy? If not, if it's more of a redshirt year for Tua, that could be a really interesting option for Jameis Winston. If he comes in, competes with Ryan Fitzpatrick, competes with Josh Rosen, I think he could beat both those guys out. And I really think that he could do some interesting things for a Miami Dolphins team who's been spending boatloads of money to bring in all these really high tier free agents to beef up their defense and beef up their offense. So that one would all depend on Tua's health. If he came back healthy, then that wouldn't be a good move for Jameis Winston. But if he came back and the agreement was, hey, we're just going to redshirt you for a year, you're not going to play for 1 year since you're still hurt, then Jameis Winston could take advantage of that, be a full starter for a year for the Miami Dolphins, then go back into free agency at age 27, and then cash out once maybe a couple of guys have retired or a couple of guys have regressed. But the last team I want to talk about as an option for Jameis Winston, and this, for me personally, is the top option. I think Jameis Winston should, pretty much take this deal 100%, is the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jameis Winston versus 6th round draft pick Gardner Minshew would be an interesting battle, but I believe it is one that Jameis Winston could ultimately win. Simply because, Gardner Minshew, he is a very interesting rookie, and he did do some stuff versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers when we played them, but I feel like he's still on a 6th round rookie contract, and you can't invest everything into Gardner Minshew right away. You still need to bring in somebody to challenge him. Enter in Jameis Winston. And I feel if Gardner Minshew is the backup, that's fine, because that means things have worked out for Jameis Winston, and he's a 6th round rookie anyway. He's pretty much a backup quarterback anyway, so why not bring in a former 1st overall pick who is only 26 years old, who just led the league in passing yards and was 2nd in the league in passing touchdowns, and just have him pretty much be your starting quarterback for a year. I know the Jacksonville Jaguars are in pretty much complete rebuild mode, but this could be a good chance for Jameis Winston. Show that you can still do some awesome things in terms of passing yards and passing touchdowns. If you limit the turnovers, you're going to get an even better deal in the free agency next time. If you're 27, 28 years old, you can show that, hey, look what I did with this team that was in a rebuild. I did some still awesome things and put up some awesome numbers. Y'all should sign me to be your starting quarterback. So I feel like in terms of finding a starting gig for Jameis Winston, the Jacksonville Jaguars make a lot of sense right now. They just traded Nick Foles. They have a void at the quarterback position, and I really feel that Jameis Winston could thrive there as a starting quarterback. But guys, that's it for this video. The Jameis Winston era has ended for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It's sad, but it was definitely had a lot of ups and a lot of downs, and we will certainly miss him. But where do you think Jameis Winston will end up after leaving the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? Let me know what you think about all this down in the comment section below. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Hope y'all enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video or the next live stream. But until then, and as always, guys, goodbye for now, and go Bucs.